We all have the power of choice in every single thing that comes up. We have the power and choice in how we respond to things that are outside of our control. And I think that that is incredibly empowering, and to realize that perhaps the choices in front of you aren't ideal, but they're still choices, and you are still very worth pursuing the very best outcome that you can with whatever choices are in front of you.
Introducing The Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of The Vixen Voice. So it's been about a month since I recorded, so I'm super excited to be here with you today. And I'm very excited because I have a very special guest, Cristina Greenfield. Cristina is the founder of Conscious Healthy Home, and she is also a founding member of the Vixen Founders Collective. So I knew Cristina well. We get to chat at least an hour every week. So I think this will be fun. She is a client and she is a friend. So you're probably going to hear us get very real today, which will be fun. But Cristina is an amazing superwoman. Not only is she a corporate attorney, but she has founded her business on the side. Yes, that's her side hustle. And you're going to hear all about the amazing business that she's building. She's also a mom and wife. And as we talked about recently, she's learning how to work in self-care. So we're going to dig into all of this with you today. And we hope that we inspire you to put yourself on the list as well, even to put yourself at the top of the list, and to really think out of the box and take maybe something that's traumatic in your life and turn it into gold like Cristina has. So Cristina, welcome.
Thank you. I am so privileged to be here. So grateful.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. I have goosebumps. I have to admit, I love it. I love it when my friends and clients come on because we already know each other. So I kind of want to dig in because we have so much to cover with you. As you know, because you listen to many episodes, my first question is, since you're a first-time guest, I would love to hear a pivotal story that really changed your life. And I'm sure you've had many, but the one that comes to mind is most relevant to create, this amazing superwoman that we have sitting here with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for the compliments. Yes, so I have been preparing. I have consumed so many of your podcasts. I love them so much. It's all such great information for these female founders and other women to share. So I was ready for this, but it's really clear for me, my pivotal story, because our entire life changed when we went through this experience that I'll describe. But basically, we had a mold experience in a beautiful home that we thought was our forever home, and it was a completely hidden. It was hidden, and so it was not visible. So we lived with that and the resulting symptoms for my entire family for almost 5 years before we figured out what was going on. But it was traumatic on so many levels. First of all, because my children were most obviously impacted, specifically my oldest daughter. She was misdiagnosed with autism, we now know, but the symptoms that she displayed was actually a result of severe neurological inflammation that she was experiencing because of the mold in the house. And, so you can just imagine my husband and I were just doing what we were supposed to do, thought we were doing what we were supposed to do, working really hard and making enough money to buy a house in a neighborhood that we were, like, wow, we've made it. We felt very accomplished. We had this tangible thing. And then just as we look back, we see that it was just a really slow degrading, of each of us as individuals, but as our family and our relationship, our finances. I mean, everything was just, it was very clear that we were not in alignment with where we were supposed to be. But in trying to figure out how we could help our daughter, because we just sort of settled into the fact, because all of the doctors just told us, well, you just missed it. she must have actually been not hitting her milestones like you thought that she was, because it was like night and day. I had a spreadsheet. I was tracking her milestones and she was hitting them.
Oh, wow.
And then suddenly, about 6 months after we lived in the house, I started to realize that the things that she had been doing, she wasn't doing anymore. She stopped making eye contact. She stopped answering to her name. She started what we now understand is called eloping. She would just run away at any minute across parking lots, like no sense of danger. She stopped talking. So I stopped hearing, I love you. I stopped hearing mommy. And so I was like, no, I looked back at videos and I was like, she did say that. She did say that, I remember, like, I have this video of her saying that, but it didn't click to me that like something had changed, and sort of stunted that development that she was seeing. So finally we found a doctor who listened to me, because I was telling everyone who I had access to, I was like, something happened, help me figure it out. But everybody was just, you missed it, just do the therapies, the special education, get into special education, do the therapies for autism and stuff. And we were never on a path to try to fix her. Like, I never thought she was broken. It was just, intuitively I thought, if like, it seems like she's suffering, she seems to be, because she would have these outbursts because she couldn't communicate, and so I was like, what can I do to help her communicate? Maybe I can change some diet, maybe I can change, maybe there's some things that I can help her body. And so that was what we were looking for. But we found this functional medicine doctor who finally heard me, and she said, this is very interesting, what happened when you registered that there was a regression. And I was like, nothing happened. We were just, everything's been normal, and she started listing things to think about. She said, well, did you move? And I said, well, yeah, we moved, but that was not something that I had ever tied. I'd never tied my environment to our health. And so it just didn't come up, didn't think about it until she brought it up. And so when she did, then we went on this, she set us on this path of figuring out, first of all, what was going on with my daughter, her body. So we did genetic testing and we figured out sort of her tools in her toolbox, what she had to work with. And then we did some blood work to see where she was today, and that those two things together confirmed that she had a mold exposure and that it was extreme and resulting in this inflammation. And so my husband and I were just shocked. We did not understand what any of this meant, but we were just sort of moving in faith by this point. We were just very confused, in a fog, of our own. And at this time, our relationship was really, really strained because we were both also experiencing inflammation and neurological issues, but we just thought it was because we have stressful jobs. Me as a lawyer, he had just founded his business. We now have a special needs child. And then I had another child by this point. So we were like, all of this stress, we were just taking handfuls of like ibuprofen every day. We had constant headaches, constant GI issues. I was very rageful. He was very forgetful. He forgot, he had extreme brain fog, and I just had like extreme nervous system dysregulation. So our relationship was very, very strained at this point.
Yeah.
But finally we found someone who, God started opening doors. And I think that the doors were there. We weren't seeing them for a very long time, but finally he started really like shining the light on the people. There's like so many angels came into our life to guide us out of this place. And I get emotional thinking about it because it's just really, really beautiful how it was so curated in our favor. He put the tools in front of us and we just had to grab them and start doing the work, And so through these people that, some of them validated for us that they had experienced something similar, which gave us, it sort of expanded us to the fact that, oh my gosh, this is real, because it's nothing that we had ever heard of before, that you could be so impacted by mold and that it could be hidden in a beautiful home. So it was unreal to us, and it was unreal to most of our family. No one had ever experienced anything like it. And so we went on a path of, we went all in. And it's really interesting because at a time when my husband and I couldn't even agree on like dinner, I looked at him and I said, I've just talked to this person. Her name is Emily. She was like probably angel number 2, if we count the doctors, angel number 1. Emily said, she called me, so interesting. she was like the third person in the line of people that I had been told to call, because I talked to my chiropractor first, and she was like, talk to my friend. I think they experienced mold. That person was sick. And so she said, you should talk to my friend Emily. And I'm not, at the time, I was not a person who reached out to people for help, but I was just like, what is happening? You know? So I call Emily. I don't know who Emily is, but I call Emily and I leave a message, and she's gracious enough to call me back. And she's like, what can I do for you? And I said, I don't know why I'm calling you. I was like, I have no idea why I'm calling you, but here's what we have going on. And she listened. She really listened, and she deeply heard. And then she told me that she had had a similar experience, and her son was misdiagnosed with autism, you know, very, very similar, even more tragic, because she had actually lost a child. That she was pregnant with this child. And because of the mold that they were experiencing in their home, it resulted in a miscarriage for her. And his name was Malachi. And so, you know, again, a complete stranger spending time telling me, validating for me that this is, in fact, this could be real, you know? And so I looked at my husband, and again, we weren't agreeing on anything, not even dinner at this point. And I said, we have to throw away everything that we own and we need to leave this house. And I thought it was past that. It takes you right back when you start telling the story.
It takes a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And he just said, okay. You know, like if there's a possibility that we can even marginally make life a little bit better for our daughter, you know, then he's like, we have to do it. We have to do it. We have to do whatever it takes. And so this is the beginning, I think, of the self-reflection and the self-discovery, because I realized how much of my time and attention was focused on these tangible things that to me meant success. All this stuff. We had so much stuff. We had 2 20-yard dumpsters full of stuff, you know, that at one point I was like, I must have that bag. I must have those shoes. I must have this car. Like, you know, all of the things that I thought were indicative of success, and they were gone, you know, and I didn't care. Because I was like, I don't want anything that could potentially, you know, I could bring it into another environment, and I could potentially be bringing this toxicity back to my daughter. I don't want it, you know? So I think that was the beginning of the transformation.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for being very real and vulnerable and sharing that emotional story. Just a couple of quick clarifying questions. So how old was your daughter when this onset?
She was about 2 when we moved into that house. It was about 2.5 when we got the official diagnosis.
Wow. And then y'all went through this for 5 years, right? Almost 5 years you shared?
Almost 5 years. So she was around, well, it was about 4, it was less than 5 years. So I think she was around 5 by the time we finally got out.
Yeah. And how long ago was this with you and your family? When did you move?
So I believe we're approaching 4 years now out of that environment. Yeah. And 4 years of telling the story, and it's still incredibly raw. Still more work to do on the processing.
I hear you. We'll let you and I talk offline about that. Hopefully I can help you with some of the healing.
Oh, yes, I love that.
But I think it's good. It fuels your passion for what you do, right? And I realize that we women, when we're on purpose and following our passion, like we're on fire, we're unstoppable, right? Like absolutely. I used to say there's nothing more beautiful than a woman in love. So let's fall in love with ourselves and each other, right? But you throw in. Yeah, it's true. And then and that's why I founded the Vixen Gathering, but you throw in passion. And I mean, it's amazing. You know, that's when we women step into our superpower, when we're on purpose and passion. And, you know, we get to combine our nurturing self with our achievement selves that most of us are who listen to this podcast and show up on this podcast. And I think that's like, you know, really when the magic happens. And gosh, there's so much to unpack from your story. So bear with me. And I want to give you a minute to breathe so that you're with me.
Thank you.
So first of all, just to kind of clarify a little bit for the audience, because, you know, there could be people listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I wonder if this is what my family's going through. Right. So you mentioned with your daughter that she had neurological inflammation. And I know you talk about this every day, but tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what does it mean? What are some of the symptoms or effects? Like, kind of what did that look like?
Sure. Yeah. So for her, it looked like her brain kind of stopped being able to fully communicate. So
Mm-hmm.
although, I would typically you talk to somebody, even a child, and they're starting to register words before they can fully articulate sentences, but like you can say, sit down, and they'll sit down. They might not be able to say sit down, but they'll sit. But it's like there became a veil or a fog in front of her where she was no longer really receiving information, and she certainly wasn't able to communicate, because she just stopped talking. And so another thing that she experienced was something called stimming. And so for her, it was flapping. She would flap her hands, which I did not realize was an issue. I just thought, oh, she's so cute. Like she does that when she's excited, but that's it's a sign that your nervous system is dysregulated. And that's how she's trying to sort of get it out. And then there was the sleep disruption. She couldn't sleep. She would wake up screaming every single night. So that was the other thing. We were also like sleep deprived for years. So this is also contributing to the stress.
Yeah.
But the screaming, she was chronically constipated. So what our doctor has explained is that there is a connection between the gut and the brain. So whatever the gut is experiencing, the brain is also experiencing. But you just think about the purpose of your organs, and the gut is an elimination, portal, basically. And if it's stopped up, whatever your body is designed to eliminate, it's staying in there. It creates some permeability issues in the gut, which just releases toxins back into the body. So not only was she taking in toxins consistently because of the house and the poor indoor air quality, but her body was releasing toxins inside. And then genetically, she had a predisposition not to be able to eliminate the toxins like she should. So it was just coming at her from all angles, basically. I think the other symptom was she became very sensitive to, she started to have sensory issues. So there were certain clothes or shoes that she couldn't or wouldn't wear, very sensitive to tags, very, very sensitive to disruption. So like we would, she was starting to line things up. She started to just like put things in lines and orders and stuff. And if you dared move it, she had a very explosive reaction. So it was the inability for her to regulate was another symptom.
Hey there, just popping in quickly. It's April Roberts, and I wanted to thank you for being a loyal listener of the Vixen Voice. It means so much to me. And because of that, we're going to be popping in these little announcements because I want you to be the first to know what's going on at the Vixen Gathering. So if you haven't done so yet, click the link below and check out the Vixen Founders Collective. The members who are already in are raving, and we would love to have you join us in the ultimate business consulting, networking, and personal growth community for Gen X female founders. See you there. Yeah. So, I want to thank you again for sharing your story because it paints a very vivid picture of what can happen, right? Even, sharing the challenges in your relationship. Obviously, I mean, anyone to hear that a 2.5-year-old is going through this, I mean, that just punches you in the gut, right? But then to see how it was affecting, and being her mother, I can't even imagine. And, so you have that, then you have relationship issues, and then I'm sure you're stressed at work because you're not sleeping, and really like, this dream life became almost like a nightmare over time, right? And so I know you were nervous about sharing your story, but I think it's important because it paints all these parts. And a couple of things, I don't know if I talk about these things on the show, but I do spiritual healing, and I just saw so many correlations in what you were sharing because your experience was with mold, but another huge problem is parasites in our body that no one talks about that causes a lot of the same problems, right?
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are spiritual parasites and there are energetic parasites. And I know this is probably getting a little too woo-woo for people out there, but if you listen, people are talking about energies that work on us, right? And it's absolutely true. I remember my ex-boyfriend was a healer, and that's how I got into it. And we were at dinner with my best friend and her husband. And then afterwards she goes, do you think that, it's her husband and I'm trying to respect her privacy, but she was like,
Sure.
sometimes we fight for no reason at all. And it just escalates and
Mm.
escalates and escalates. Do you think, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's probably an outside force, like affecting you. Like you picked up some energy
Mm.
from someone, you could have a
Mm-hmm.
parasite, you could have mold in your home. And I just bring these to light because we live in a society that wants to tell us something's wrong with us. Right. And so we
Yeah.
always look and say, oh my gosh, like I'm such a bitch. Why do I keep fighting with my husband? Or
Oof.
why
Yeah.
can't my husband remember anything? Right. I mean, I hate
Mm-hmm.
to use that term, but I think so many of us women have internalized that term at some point in our life. Or if you're a strong leader, like, oh,
Yeah.
and I think, I don't know. It came to me. I went through a 2 week period where I felt like my foundation had been taken out from under me recently, and something was just aggravating me, and I couldn't tell what. And I think I shared this
Mm-hmm.
with y'all in the Vixen Founders Collective. I realized the world is trying to tell us we're not enough. Like, and
Mm.
I really try in my coaching and consulting life to show my clients how magical they are. And okay, we just have to redirect this way, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not human, I'm not perfect, so I'm sure I might make them feel badly sometimes. But when you think about it, our first inclination is what's wrong with me, and I'm kind of on this campaign to stop that. Right? If
I love that.
suddenly
Yeah.
your relationship is going south, maybe it has nothing to do with either of you. Maybe there's this external force, or maybe it's a
Mm-hmm.
stressor at work. Like, I think let's give ourselves grace and love and tap into the person we love and remember why we
Absolutely.
love them and
Yeah.
discover the difference together. Because, divorce is an epidemic in our country. And I just think if we would stop and pause and like appreciate what we have or figure things out, because I mean,
Yeah.
think about where your family could be today. And I would love for you to paint us the happy picture of where you are
Yeah.
today and what's happened.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
I don't know. I kind of felt called to share that because I'm certain during all of this, you started internalizing and wondering what you were doing
Oh,
wrong or
100%.
what was going on. I mean, do you mind
Yeah.
sharing with us? And then kind of what was
Sure.
and I love you shared about angels. I have a story about that too, but I want to get back
Yeah.
to you. But,
Okay.
just like how you internalize things. And then what was that aha moment that suddenly you kind of told us in our story, but if you can be like when you realized, okay, I got to figure this out, right? Like what
Yeah.
happened?
I definitely internalized it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, definitely internalized it. All of the negative things that someone could say about themselves as a mother or as a wife.
Yeah.
I felt that
Yeah.
because I was like, it seems easier for other people
Yeah.
and it's so hard for
Yeah.
me. And in my education and my career,
Mm-hmm.
all I ever had to do was give it all and it worked
Yeah.
out. Not the same in your home life. You have to dig even deeper. It's not just about
Mm-hmm.
giving all of your time or all of your attention. There's the
Mm-hmm.
emotional capacity part to it, and there's the introspective piece. And
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't the same. The formula didn't work, for
Yeah.
everything that I was at home. So I absolutely internalized it. There was definitely discussions of divorce between my husband and I because we were just so frustrated. We were just
Mm-hmm.
this is not the life that we believed we were going to create together.
Yeah.
But literally, again, this is God because we both have such a love for our children that we
Mm-hmm.
just we sort of agreed that we were just like neither of us want to split time with the kids. We can sort of coexist, independently, you doing
Yeah.
what you need to do, me
Yeah.
doing what I need to do, but that way we don't have to split time. And so that was where we were, like up until the time that
Mm-hmm.
we left that house. And when we left that house, I think it was a leap of faith. It was 100% a leap of faith just for the chance, for it to make a difference for our daughter. We had no idea how big of a difference it was going to be, but it was just the
Mm-hmm.
chance. And then doing that together, that was probably the first thing that we had done together in a very long time
Mm.
because we were just
Yes.
coexisting parallel. So for us to come together for that purpose, I think we began to see each other again, like
Mm-hmm.
as who we were, who we
Yeah.
were when we committed to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
so and then, eventually it didn't happen right away. We went through a time where we had no home because we had this home that we were trying to fix. And then we didn't have a place to stay because we weren't sure if we didn't know how to find a safe place. So we ended up, thankfully, my parents let us stay with them. But like, as 30-year-olds with kids and full-time jobs living with our parents, you can just imagine the blow to the ego. We were like, what happened? What is this?
It's funny because I ended up back at my parents' house at 31 when I separated from my husband, and I had left, at 18, and I was like, same thing, like successful life. I was married, running my household, and I'm like, how the heck did I end up back at my parents' house, like cooking them dinner? Yes. But I think these things are important to share because we live in a world where everyone sees the highlight reel, and I want to hear, and I know you're going to share the rainbow side, but for me, that was an important time for me to pause and change my life. And I'm sure. So I guess, how did y'all cope going to your parents' house? And what I'm super curious about is, because I was in London one time studying and I had terrible food poisoning. And when I came home, I was so thin because I was afraid to eat, right? Did you, I'm hearing that when you're saying like, we needed to find a safe place, like how paranoid, was that a struggle going forward? Yes.
So scared. Yes. We were so scared because we were like, we absolutely cannot emotionally or financially make the same mistake again. We've just lost everything. Now we have to replace everything, and we have to find another place to live, So we're like, we cannot go through this again. So we were absolutely terrified. But again, I think God stepped in and helped us find a place. We ended up renting a townhome. And, what I've learned is that townhomes aren't the safest to begin with, but they're also, and new builds are not always safe, but we didn't know enough to have let that freeze us. We just thought our house, it was a big house. It was an older house. It'd been renovated. Definitely we're not going that route again. And so we just thought, new house, we'll just try a new house. We did some testing, but really for like 6 months after we lived in that place, I ignored everything. Like I didn't focus on, I could no longer like go back to the trauma of thinking what could be happening in this place. But finally one day, about 6 months in, I just kind of got like a feeling, and I was like, okay, if I truly am committed to not falling into the same mistake again, we've got to open our eyes, and we have to make sure we understand what exactly is happening in this new environment. So I ended up calling in a mold inspector just to have them take a look and see, is everything performing like it should? And they found some moisture in the plenum of the HVAC. And so, but again, because God so graciously led us in the direction of finding these owners of this townhome, and we had told them what we experienced and stuff, and they were super gracious. And so we said, we want to replace the plenum. It's going to cost about $3,000. Can we split that with you? Because it's going to cost us more than that to try to go find another place. But I obviously can't make a big change to your home. This is not my property, And they agreed, and they were so accommodating to us. They were super accommodating. So not at all the nightmare stories that you hear, sometimes of people being taken advantage of, which does happen, by landlords and stuff. That just was not our experience. So we were very, very blessed by the homeowners, and that they allowed us to do what we needed to do to make sure that we kept that place safe. And of course, we also, explained to them the value. We were like, we just left a $500,000 home and lost money on it and everything that we owned. And this is your investment property. So in order to protect your investment, you need to understand that these improvements need to happen. Otherwise it's not going to be investment for very long, So we were just sharing our story and our knowledge by that point with them as well, to help them make a good decision that also benefited us. But yeah, we were very, very scared that we were going to find ourselves in the same situation, especially being in the Houston area. It's a hot, humid climate. So there's a lot of conditions that are conducive to mold.
Yeah. And a lot of flooding and storms. I know. Yeah. It's crazy the effect it can have. So I Thank you again for sharing your story. What I love is this is fortuitous because yesterday in the Vixen Founders Collective, we were talking about courage, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, making the change and throwing away everything you own. Like, I mean, this is like the epitome of courage and sharing your story that still brings you to tears today. So I just like, want to thank you for that, and I also hope that like you stop and recognize like the great work you're doing, because I know
Thank
this
you.
is your passion. So
It
thank you
is.
so much.
Absolutely.
I
Making
love
sure no
it.
one else finds themselves in that situation where there's just a prolonged period of unknown is
Yeah.
100% my passion.
Yeah, thank you, Cristina. So
Yeah.
I want to give the caveat that Cristina is an
Yes.
attorney, but as we talk about mold in your home, she is not giving legal advice, right? I'll do the
Yeah.
disclaimer for you.
Thank
This
you.
is just her sharing her story in order to help others, right? Which I think is
Absolutely.
incredibly important and brave. So thank you so much for that. So share with us, how have you pivoted today, and you're now helping homeowners, builders, etc., to avoid the situation, right? Or remedy the
Absolutely.
situation or the direction to go in. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what you're doing with Conscious Healthy Home.
Yes, I'd love to. So this again was just it was an organic growth period through all these, revelations that happened. But I think the most important revelation is that my daughter has healed significantly. She's
I
actually
love it.
lost the autism diagnosis,
Mm.
which that in and of itself is not the win, but she's relieved of having the symptoms
Yeah.
that earned her the diagnosis. And so to have gone through what we went through without knowing what the outcome could be. I mean, it could have been a marginal improvement and we would have been happy with that, but to see her quality of life improve and her suffering, lessen, and her body be able to relieve itself of the toxicity and support her little system, support her brain, support her gut, to see that pay off and a quality of life where she's at school now without accommodations. I mean, she did
Wow.
just get a diagnosis of dyslexia, so she's getting that support, but they're not the special education autism related support that she needed at one time. She doesn't need that anymore. And so that's incredibly validating for me as a mother and as a person who took a leap of faith and courage to see that paid off for her. I would do it even if it was just a marginal benefit to her. I would do it. But it's beautiful to see her and to hear her. She talks so much. She talks so much. I mean, my husband and I, we look at each other sometime and we're like, we prayed for this. Remember, we prayed for this. She's like, and we're like, thank you, God. It's so much talking, but it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. She has so much to say, and I just can't. Like, it was all locked inside at one point, and now it can come out, and so it's incredible. But that really fueled me, because I knew, people told me, and just nobody meant anything malicious by this, but people were trying to just, I don't know, they felt like they were trying to help, and they would say,
Yeah.
mold is everywhere, and I was like. Like, that is not encouraging to me, and that is not grounding me. If anything, that fuels me, because I'm like, two things can be true. Mold can be everywhere, and that is true, but that's not the end of the story. It does not belong in your home. It does not belong in your HVAC systems, does not belong proliferating inside your walls, does not belong impacting your indoor air quality. It does not belong in your body. It belongs outside. It's meant to break down, and that's what it does in whatever environment it is in. And so, I thought surely there's a way. And if there's not a way, I'm going to discover the way. But luckily, many building scientists and building biologists before me have already discovered this. And it's simply managing air and water. And so with that very simple revelation, and the fact that I don't have a building background before I undertook my studies to try to improve my family's situation, I thought people can learn this and people need to know this. Because if, I consider myself as a pretty smart and a savvy person. If I didn't know this, then there's many other people who are in situations, like me, who also don't know, and who, if they did know, would do something different. Right. And so with Conscious Healthy Home, I didn't seek out to start a business, but because I had an Instagram presence where I was trying to encourage people to increase their education, I was trying to just share resources and things that I had found and things that I had learned to just inspire people to do the same and to increase their awareness about their indoor environment. Then I started having people organically, they were reaching out and they're asking for very pointed and detailed project specific advice. Mm-hmm. And so for a while I would undertake to give them, I would do all the research and I would provide them like, hey, here's what you need for free. Because again, I had no business. And then they would, say thank you and they would go off. And then eventually sometimes they would come back and they're like, oh, I ended up paying a consultant. And guess what the consultant told me? They told me X. And I was like, I told you that. Like, that's what I told you for free. Yeah. But then I thought, and as a lawyer, I don't typically, like, my time is money, right? I mean, as most people's are, but lawyers are used to billing in billable hours. And so it occurred to me that I was like, people just they're not valuing, they think that there's something more if they're paying for it. They think that there's some other level of advice, and so I was really appreciative of the opportunity to sort of plant the seed, because I do think it takes, several times to hear this information for it really to sink in. And so don't fault anybody for, not just taking the free advice from some random person on the internet and actioning it. I do not blame them, whatsoever. But it just occurred to me that I was just like, you know what, in order to protect myself as well, I really need to legitimize this as a business so that I can continue helping people, because I just can't stop. Like, I can't stop sharing this information because it is just, it's been so life-changing for me. So one day I just woke up and I was like, okay, I'm starting a business. And so I did. I founded Conscious Healthy Home. And the way that I describe it is that this company is grounded in building science and building biology. I am a non-fear-based consultant. I absolutely do not prescribe to the idea that people need me. There is information out there that anyone can get, and I want to help people get that information so that they can action it, so that they can change or improve their lives. Mm-hmm. But the fact that my company and my advice is all grounded in science, it's all grounded in building biology, and it's all grounded on the belief that I can empower you. I don't want to come in and be the prescriptive consultant that tells you XYZ, because other times that I've told our story when it was more raw, I can't count the number of times that I said, well, we didn't know. We hired all the right people, but we didn't know, and for me, I'm like, I think about it in terms of the law as well, but I'm like, ignorance is not an excuse. Yeah. And so I turned that to myself, and I'm like, I didn't know, but I'm still the one that felt the impact because I wasn't able to ask more questions or to question the advice or to action the report or whatever it was. I didn't know, but I could have known. And so I like to help people know, to empower themselves. And I tell them, I flat out tell people whenever we do the interview process of, when they're considering working with me, I say, something you need to know is that I'm going to empower you, but I'm not going to make the choice for you. We are going to answer all of your questions so that you have all of the information, but ultimately the decision is going to be yours. And I think that is incredibly important for the long game, because my goal is not just to get that one client to help them through that one project. My goal is that they are then empowered to manage their home and therefore their health for the long term. And to do that, you need to understand why you made those decisions and those choices. But I went and I got certified as a building biology advocate through the Building Biology Institute, which was an incredible line of coursework that really helped me to understand sort of where some of the building failures happen. And then I went further and I got certified by an organization called FIAS, which is a passive house organization. And passive house is a way of building that really focuses on the building envelope first. So I became a certified passive house builder through that coursework. And so those things combined with my lived experience and then my analytical mind that I've honed over almost 14 years as a lawyer, although the disclaimer is true, this is not legal advice, but I'm able to really help people walk through a risk analysis, because as a commercial lawyer, my job is to help my clients get the deal done. And that doesn't mean to eliminate the risk. That means to understand and mitigate the risk and decide where you're going to give and take. And so I help my clients with that thought process, right? Because I'm like, look, there is no mold-free home. There is no 100%. There is no contract that is going to protect you. Contract is just paper. what's going to protect you is you. And we are going to get you ready to make the choices, to get your eyes on, to be aware of your surroundings, to protect yourself, because that is ultimately the one measure of how you're going to increase your own well-being while living in your home.
Yeah. You have so much that I want to chat about, but I know we're coming close to time, so I want to turn this. I'm going to have you back.
Sure.
In fact, as you know, we have a couple of members of the Founders Collective that talk about sustainable or healthy building. So maybe
Yes,
I
that's
know
so
we did a
much.
panel before for home office, but maybe we'll do it for the home. I'd love to talk about that. But a couple
Oh
of
yeah.
things you said I want to highlight, because a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs or planning to start a business.
Yeah.
There was a point in time where you had to determine if you were going to continue running a charity or if you were going to run a business. And by the way, either choice is okay, but know
Yeah.
which you're running, right? Because I
Right.
see so many female founders suffer because from burnout, not making the finances they want, etc., because they say they're running a business, but they're giving away their services, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so in reality, they're running a partial charity. So just be
Yeah.
clear. Are you doing
Yeah.
charity or are you running a business? And if you're running a business, you should get paid for that advice. Now, that doesn't mean you
Absolutely.
can't over deliver to your clients. That's totally your
Yes.
choice. Another
Yeah.
thing you talked about is when you realize that people took the advice of the consultant they hired. And this is so true. It just seconds my first point. When people pay you, like they intrinsically get more value because it's an exchange of energy, right? And they
Yeah.
give it a different weight. And so
Yeah.
this is, if you really want to help people, charge what you're worth because they are
Mm-hmm.
going to listen. You also talked about choices. And I always like to say, when I found the ultimate freedom was when I realized everything is my choice. And in fact, God gave me free will and no one can take
Yeah.
that away from me. And it's a choice to do nothing. Like you said, you chose to be informed. You and your husband could have chosen to divorce. You chose to stay together for your family. And, I think when we start understanding that everything is a choice, and sometimes we don't like the choice we have to make, but we make it for a higher purpose, right?
Yes.
Then we get rid of victimhood and we're in control of our
Yeah.
life again and we're truly engaged in living. And I just thought that was so important. And then finally, you said mitigate the risk. And you talked about, a lot of times we let the fear of risk get in the way. There's never
Yeah.
a situation where there's zero risk. I totally agree with you because
Exactly.
I was a lawyer as well, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you're never gonna. It's like when I was a financial advisor. If we were looking at like insurance products, and they're like, oh, so these are guaranteed. Okay, the company says they're guaranteed, but nothing's 100%. There's always a way through. I would
Yes.
tell people, right? Like the lawyer hat came
Yeah.
into me. So I
It
love,
has to.
like
Yeah.
yeah, what you can do is do your best, do your due
Yes.
diligence, ask the
Yeah.
questions. And one other thing came up when you were chatting earlier, and again, these are just some tactical takeaway tips. Like, be your own advocate. I won't get into it now, but I went through a 2-year period of visiting different specialists when I was like a young lawyer working 80 hours a week, and
Yeah.
I even had a doctor ask me, do you need to see a psychologist? Because I don't think something's wrong with
Mm.
you. And I'm like, I'm in physical
Mm.
pain where I have to go home 2 days a month.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with me, right?
Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I just think the more we speak about these things and someone's out there going through that, and be your own advocate. Like in the medical field, a lot of times they want to divert you or tell you you're imagining things. This is my experience. You've had this experience. Or you get a
Yeah.
misdiagnosis. So like don't feel
Mm-hmm.
badly to go get a second opinion and learn as
Yeah.
much as you can, and like really be your own advocate when it comes to your health, your home, your family, your
Absolutely. Yeah.
well-being. I don't know. Sorry, I don't want to get on my soapbox because I could talk about that
No, I'm
forever,
with
but
you. I'm with
you
you. It's
know,
it's so important, but it goes back to choice.
yeah.
It really goes
Mm-hmm.
back to choice, and I think it can get a little complicated, particularly when I think about that with respect to my daughter's autism diagnosis, because
Yeah.
there were times when I was like, she's beautifully and wonderfully made. This whatever this
Yeah.
label is doesn't mean anything,
Right.
and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything to support her and to the best of my
Mm-hmm.
ability. So digging deeper, I think sometimes there can be some guilt perceived when you are looking, for different opinions, because they might feel that maybe it's that they're not accepting of who they have in front of them, which is not the case. I think is to advocate, you just always need to get, second, third opinions, because we're all just people, the doctors are just people with opinions, so
I agree. And sometimes, No, and sometimes they don't like it when you don't like their opinion, but there are plenty of amazing doctors as well. Like you said, they're just people, because I had an angel doctor that helped me as well, and you had that experience, and so just keep going until you feel you find that person that matches how you want to advocate for yourself. Like don't feel badly about that. Well, Cristina, I apologize, but I want to pivot on us a little bit, because I need to get into some fun questions with you. But before we do that, I know you have an offer for everyone listening. So if you want to share that. And by the way, if you're listening, all this information will be in the show notes. If you go to vixengathering.com, go to the podcast page, you can find the show notes. Or you could simply subscribe to the Vixen Voice, and it will show up in your inbox every Tuesday and Thursday, so you don't have to go search for the amazing resources that our guests offer. So, Cristina, I'd love for you to share what you're offering to our listeners today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a membership that I've just started. We've just kicked this off. And the idea is that I'm trying to make sure that I can provide value, but also do that in the small amount of time that I have to do this work. And so it's a group membership type opportunity where users are going to have access to me. We're going to walk through, some of the primary concerns of buildings, potential building defects, how to mitigate them. They'll have access to every single guide that I've created at no charge. We have expert calls. So I've got people coming in who are experts that really give hands-on opportunities to talk, so you can have Q&As with them and stuff. So you just have access to people. You have access to my resources. You have access to me, and together we're gonna make sure that you're gonna learn what you need in order to make your project successful, whatever that is. So the group is called the Conscious Collective, and for listeners of the Vixen Voice, if you use code Vixen, you'll get 50% off for that year of membership. And I hope that people join, because what I realized is that when I was having these calls, I'm repeating the same baseline information over and over again. So I just thought, let's come together, let's come together and let's get all this information in one place. And then you can even kind of, pivot off each other, because I don't pretend to know everything. So there's information that people out there know and have seen and have used, and we can share. So it's really just a really collaborative group of people who are interested in increasing their own health by changing the environment that they live in. So code Vixen, 50% off. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for that gift. No, I love it. I love the magic of a group. And I feel what would be powerful with your group is them hearing each other's stories, to know that they're not alone in this, right? And so they're not internalizing and really striving to live the best life. So I love that. So I thank you again. I'm going to pivot on you, and I want to ask you, Cristina, when do you feel you're most feminine, like the feminine energy really flowing?
Yes. So I actually feel the most feminine when I'm working with my clients, because my word, which my friend Bex, helped me determine whenever she was doing a photo shoot with me, it was like the most beautiful moment with her. But she said, how do you want to be seen? How do you want your clients to feel? And the word that came up for me was maternal. And that to me means that you are cared for, you are deeply seen, you are empowered, but you are the one who's going to be making the choice. I think mothers guide, and I think they hold space, but ultimately, they lead their children to making their decisions. So when I'm working with my clients and I'm empowering them and I'm teaching them and I'm guiding them, I feel incredibly feminine to just hold that space strongly, as an expert and as somebody who's walked the path before them. I think that it makes me feel very grounded. It's like I envision myself with both feet on the ground, like holding my hands out, holding them. And that's very feminine to me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very Mother Earth. You're tapping in there.
Yeah.
I love it. That's so beautiful. So what color would your feminine energy be, or what color is it?
Yes. So my feminine energy is like a chartreuse. So this is coming through like yellow, but it's actually a yellow green. Yeah. And I doubted myself a little bit because I've listened to you ask this question to many of your guests, and everybody that I've heard, it always picks like a magenta pink hue. And I was like, I do love that color. I do love that color. But then I recall you telling me that you need to stick with the first thing that comes to your mind. Yeah. And so the very first time I ever heard you ask that question, it was the chartreuse green. And so that is my
love
color.
It.
I know for sure.
So it's interesting because I've heard black, I've heard red, like some stronger colors like teal blue. Recently I got brown. That was the first time I'd heard brown, and that was interesting. Yeah. And she's a very grounded fitness instructor. Oh. And then, I got Kelly green. So no, I love it because it just shows how different we women are, and yet still so beautiful, like collectively. Like I like to think of women as different gemstones. So like everybody has their own color.
That. Yes.
Because we're multifaceted.
Absolutely.
We're not complex. We're not difficult. We're multifaceted. That's how I like to say it.
I agree with that 100%. Love that.
I love it. Well, to wrap up here, Cristina, I always say the world needs more love, and I shared that's why I even started the Vixen Gathering. So what would your parting message be to our listeners?
My parting message is decide and do. And actually have a little tattoo that reminds me of that. Wow. It says decide, do. And that's how I live my life. And I encourage you to do the same, because we all have the power of choice in every single thing that comes up. We have the power and choice in how we respond to things that are outside of our control. And I think that is incredibly empowering, and to realize that perhaps the choices in front of you aren't ideal, but they're still choices, and you are still very worth pursuing the very best outcome that you can with whatever choices are in front of you. And every single choice that you make is a step. And so if you continue, you might not be able to go all the way with the choices in front of you to the place that you ultimately want to be, but you can take a step, and then you'll have different choices, and you can take another step, and you can take another step. And I think that there's certainly room for processing our feelings and for processing our traumas. And I certainly have more work to do there, and I'm open and ready for it. But I just encourage you to not get stuck in perfection. Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Just keep going.
Well, I also like to say when we reach perfection, we're probably in heaven, and I'm not quite ready for that yet. So I'm okay being imperfect.
We're not ready for that.
No, I mean, if God tells me it's my time, I'm okay. Like, I'm totally okay with that, but I don't think it's my time yet. So I'm okay being imperfect.
We've got work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the fun part. Oh my gosh, Cristina, it was so lovely having you today. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I love that your hubby brought you a tissue so we can see how beautiful your relationship is now. And oh my gosh, that's amazing. He's definitely a keeper. Coffee and tissue. Well, I can't wait until I'm back in the Houston area so I can meet your beautiful family. But have an awesome day. And if you're listening, please go follow Cristina. You heard on Instagram, she shares plenty of tips. And if you want to get more informed wherever you are in the country, really the world, check out her membership and see if it's something great for you. Have a great day. Go forward with love. I love Cristina's message, decide and do. And I'm going to say, decide to love yourself. Let's make that decision today. All right. Bye, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to today's show notes, including links to all the resources we mentioned, visit vixengathering.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of The Vixen Voice.